Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Ramesh Chuk and you are watching the Domain Podium. In today's interview mock series, we will talk about dynamic currency conversion, a topic where many candidates struggle to provide the most desirable answer. While it is crucial to focus on four key aspects, what, why, who and how, we often start answering the how part of it, how the transaction is processed in any issuing or acquiring system. And we generally ignore the first three WH words. Therefore, let's explore the best way to approach this question in any interviews. And on the interview table, a special guest is joining me to help mimic this interview today, Mr. Vivek Tiwari. With over 20 years of experience in consulting and customer services role across various industry verticals including banking and payment, Vivek is currently working as Associate Director Customer Success of Southeast Asia at Euronet Singapore. So without further delay, let's see how Vivek cracked this interview questions today. So Vivek, the next topic I want to pick up for a discussion is DCC, Dynamic Currency Conversion. Do you know how DCC transactions are initiated from any physical terminal or virtual terminal, and how they differ from a standard cross-border or international transaction?
Sure. Ramesh, a typical cross-border or international transaction is in the currency of the merchant. So if you are withdrawing from an ATM overseas or performing a transaction at a POS terminal, the default action is to be charged in the currency of the merchant or the local currency. In dynamic currency conversion, it's a service provided by certain merchants and acquiring banks where a cardholder is offered to choose between paying in the local or the merchant currency or his home or cardholder currency. In this scenario, user is given an option to choose to pay in two different currencies, either his home currency or in the local or merchant's currency. And this type of transaction is called a dynamic currency conversion or a DCC transaction.
So you mean to say when a customer is given a choice at the time of checking out something or placing an order at a physical store, whenever the customer is given a choice to select a currency, whether it is going to be the merchant currency or it is his own local currency, so that exchange rate offering from the merchant side, and accordingly the customer is going to choose one of the currency and then the transaction is going to be initiated. I'm still not clear, how do you differentiate between the two? Okay, one is a standard cross-border transaction, international transaction, or a DCC transaction. What if I as a merchant, I as a customer is approaching an international merchant, I'm visiting a country, okay, and I'm trying to make a transaction over there. How would I know that whether this is a DCC or it is going to be a normal transaction, international transaction? How would I as a customer would know this?
Sure. So if you are shopping online on a website and doing a purchase, or you have actually taken a flight and gone to a different country that you're visiting, foreign country, and you perform a transaction, by default, the expected behavior is that the transaction will be effected in that country and the merchant's currency. If you're shopping at Amazon US, the transaction would be in US dollar. If you have just taken a flight to Japan and you're purchasing something at 7-Eleven, then that transaction will be in Japanese yen. That is the default behavior. However, some merchants provide this service called DCC or dynamic currency conversion. They offer to the user a choice to pay in Japanese yen, the local merchant's currency, or in Emirati dirham, which is the cardholder's local currency, or Indian rupees if the person is. So being offered a choice to pay in either of the two currencies is what is called as dynamic currency conversion. The reason that it is called dynamic currency conversion is because In this case, the merchant is performing that currency conversion and hence offering that choice to the cardholder to pick up and choose one currency.
So Vivek, how it benefits a cardholder? If I'm visiting a country, okay, so I have two choices, right? One is to perform a transaction or allow a merchant to perform a transaction in its own currency. Think of it like I belong to UAE and I'm visiting US. So merchant can do a transaction in USD. That's number one scenario. Second scenario can be upfront at the time of shopping or placing an order at a physical store. I opted in for a dynamic currency conversion and I prefer to do a transaction in UAE dirham. Okay. So what's the benefit for me in these kind of scenarios? Can you help me understand that?
Sure. So dynamic currency conversion is a service provided by the merchants and they're acquiring banks, sometimes in partnership with a FX provider or a DCC service provider. Now, the two entities together work to give this option or this service to the cardholders, and it brings a range of benefits to the cardholder. Number one, it simplifies the understanding when a person is very used to purchasing and knows the value of a product or good or a service, their local currency. It helps them understand better when the amount is presented in their local currency. The second thing is it reduces the risk of the cardholder as currency exchange rates fluctuate. The cardholder is completely free of such a worry. He has no risk. And the last thing is that if there is any issue with that transaction, he can also request a chargeback. Now, there are certain rules that govern this offering of dynamic currency conversion or DCC service to cardholders. The card schemes have defined these rules, and I will elaborate a couple of those rules. Firstly, cardholder should be very clearly presented the two choices in his home currency or the merchant's currency, and there should be coercion. There should be no default selection of one currency being default and the other as the secondary. Both should be put equally in a very neutral manner. The cardholder should also be given the choice to choose. His choice should be respected. Lastly, card schemes also dictate that the cardholder should be involved in an active participation. He should choose. Staff at a hotel or a merchant's cashier should not press on his behalf. The cardholder should be given the POS terminal and asked to press whether he wants to pay in the local currency or the last is, after the transaction is over, the printed receipt should very clearly display the exchange rate offered at the time of currency conversion, any markup applied by the merchant, and the total amount he has paid in his home currency. These are some rules governing this DCC conversion transaction.
Tell me one thing, Vivek. You talked about the exchange rate, right? Between the merchant currency and to the cardholder's own currency, which is in this case should be from USD to AED. In case of DCC, the exchange rate will be applied at the time of when the transaction is getting triggered from the point of sale terminal, right? So I, as a user, how it benefits me? Like in normal case, when I'm not opting in UAE as a transaction currency, as a DCC transaction currency, whereas I just simply ask merchant to go ahead with the USD. How would I get benefited from this one? I'm just really not able to connect to that aspect of it.
Sure. So what happens in terms of in a dynamic currency conversion transaction, the cardholder has that transparency, that assurance that he's paying exactly 200 Emirati dirham for this transaction.
Okay.
He is very sure that 2 days later in his card statement, he will see exactly 200 Emirati dirham.
Exactly. Yep.
A cent more or a cent less.
Yeah.
In a normal local currency transaction, what happens is that the the cardholder pays in the local merchant currency, which is US dollars, because he's in US, and has to wait for 2 or 3 days later only to see the amount appearing in his card statement, and then he sees the actual amount he's charged based on the conversion rate on the day the transaction was placed to his card statement.
Yeah, excellent.
Transparency is the great benefit that the customer has, the peace of mind, the simplicity of understanding.
And do you know like how it benefits any issuer? Is there any benefit to the issuer if a customer is or lose to the issuer? How does issuer get impacted because of a customer is choosing the currency upfront at the time of transaction? Is there any kind of assessment that being done on the issuing side, on the fees or charges, like any impact to that?
Now, typically a foreign currency transaction that comes in, the exchange rate or the conversion takes place at the card scheme level. And issuers who get a foreign currency transaction arriving at their bank typically apply a FX markup on these transactions. They are fully aware that this is a foreign currency transaction and they have to take the risk of currency conversion and hence apply a small markup. Now, if a user performs a dynamic currency conversion transaction, the issuer is also aware and they often are freed from an exchange rate risk, and hence, depending on issuers, they do apply sometimes a small markup or sometimes they don't. So a DCC transaction is pretty neutral from an issuer point of view. They have nothing to gain or lose drastically if a person performs a DCC transaction. Typically,
but sorry, can you come again?
Yeah, typically, issuers would love it if it is a fully foreign currency transaction because they have slightly higher markups usually. The markups for DCC transactions are either not there at all or it is typically lower than for FX transactions.
But generally, who maintains the exchange rate, for a standard cross-border transaction? DCC, you answered. For DCC, directly the point of sale or the merchant is integrated to some foreign exchange house, and through which they are getting the downloading all the exchange rate, right, at the time of transaction posting. But what about a standard international transaction?
For standard international transactions, Visa and MasterCard publish their rates online, and those are the rates applied for every transaction. Now, at the time of authorization and at the time of clearing or settlement, the rates might fluctuate slightly, and the ultimate charge posted to a cardholder's account is the exchange rate at the time of settlement.
Exactly. One last question, Vivek, from my side on this topic. What if DCC flag is not present in the authorization request? How can an issuer identify it is an international transaction? What are the other data elements which will help issuer to know this is not a domestic transaction, it is an international transaction?
Sure. Certain issuers use the merchant country. Card schemes enforce populating data elements correctly as part of their checks. And there are also MasterCard and Visa mandates and edits that help you ascertain that all acquirers and merchants follow the scheme mandates accurately.
Merchant country code, can you name the ISO data element if you know?
It's also D43, which is basically the merchant narrative, and it contains subfields. One of them is merchant country. So merchant country can be used to determine that.
Since we mentioned about merchant country code, which is data element 43, my last question, I'm sorry, just one more question from my side, Vivek. What are the benefits to merchant for a DCC transaction in comparison to a normal international transaction? Are there any benefits actually to merchant or not?
There are three benefits that merchants have as part of being able to provide DCC to their customers. First is it's a better service to be able to offer multiple currency options to their customers and leads to customers. Number two, it can also be an opportunity for revenue for them, because offering a currency, they have margins from the exchange rates. And thirdly, because customers are choosing their home currency, there is very little chargebacks for these type of transactions. So these are some of the benefits merchants have in providing DCC.
So thank you so much, Vivek. Thanks for your time and thanks for joining us. It was really fun talking to you. And with this video, we completed our first episode of Interview Mock. I hope we will continue this journey. And it was truly a pleasure having you here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramesh. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And I hope the information in this session will be helpful, especially with the increase in tourists, and people traveling overseas can judiciously decide on how to pay, whether using dynamic currency conversion or in the local currency when they are withdrawing cash or performing any POS transaction. Thank you.
And not only that, if anyone is being interviewed, they can also be benefited from this. Thank you.
Listen, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.